All right. All right, we'll go ahead and get started then. Perfect. So, like I said, those of you that joined us last week, we are super excited to have you back. If you were not able to join us last week due to previous commitments, we're really glad that you guys joined us today. You are joining with the Shelby EdTech team. And so, for those of you that don't know, that is myself. I am Tracy Davis, the Program Area Specialist. And then over in another room, is Ashley Elliott and Matt Wilson. You can see them in the same screen there. They're in the library. We are joining today from Calera Middle. And so we're super excited to have each of you here with us. So thanks for joining us today. And we're looking forward to a great time together. So thank you, Kylie. We appreciate it. To get started, just to revisit our purpose for having this book study. The quote from page 10 in the book was, AI won't change everything, but it will change a lot. And we realize that education just on its own changes all the time. But the fact that we've now factored in more so than in the past, the AI component of it, we know that education, both our teaching and our students' learning, is going to change. So our goal this summer in doing the book study was to start conversations for our teachers to understand artificial intelligence and also how it will impact education. We do not have all the answers by any means. So this is more of a discussion, a collaboration. What are our thoughts? How do we see this working in our classroom? What might we change in what we've been doing in the past? How can we incorporate and embrace the AI, and what does that look like in our classroom? So that's kind of the goal and the purpose for us being together. So today we want to get started with an activity called a brain dump. And page 41 of the book in chapter 3, it talks about using the retrieval practice, brain dumps, and other memory strategies is a way that something that we need to kind of revisit. And we're going to come back to that. But we thought, you know what, a great way to do that is for all of us in the meet to participate in a brain dump. So in the chat, the way this is going to work is in the chat, I'm going to drop a bit.ly. And if you can click on that bit.ly, it will open to a slide deck. And in the slide deck, there is some instructions, and I'll go over those, and then we'll kind of talk through how a brain dump actually works. And so we felt like it was a good way for us to start the conversation, but it's also something that you can take back to your classroom and use with your students as well. So in the document, you will see the first page. And that, I see lots of you already in it. Great. Okay. So a brain dump is when you write down everything you can remember about a topic. So the first thing that we're going to do is just do it for 30 seconds. So you will see the first 1, 2, 3 pages are more the instructions. So find a page starting with page 4 all the way down until like 40 something. That you can add your name to the top of it. And all we're going to do first is just type in that very first column. And the very first column just says 30 seconds. So in 30 seconds, all we want you to do is think about, okay, what can I remember? I'm not necessarily looking back through the book, but what can I remember in my head from the information and what was shared in chapter 3 of the AI for Educators book. And so at the end of 30 seconds, we'll stop. We'll kind of come back together, and then we'll do each of the next pieces. Okay, so I'm going to set my phone timer, and we're going to have 30 seconds for you on your slide to add anything and everything that you can remember from chapter 3. All right, I'm going to get a timer going and start. I'm muted. I apologize. Sorry about that. Okay, so that was 30 seconds. Not a whole lot of time to remember and type in. So now we're going to move on to a minute. So that's the second column. So we're done typing in the first column. In the second column, you'll have a minute to add to. Okay, these are the things that I remembered in 30 seconds, but what else can I remember now? And type that in the minute column. Okay, so I'm going to set a timer for a minute. And then we will go. Okay, that was our minute. Hopefully, you were able in the minute time to add more to that middle section that you remembered and that spoke to you, that stood out about the information in the chapter. So, then the third part to a brain dump is the last column that says peek and add. And so, in this one, we're going to set the timer for 2 minutes. And you're kind of doing two different things. You're spending some time going through the slide deck and kind of reading what other people wrote and maybe something that somebody else wrote or remembered about the chapter wasn't something that you did. And so then you can go back to your slide and in the third column, add new information that you've gleaned from others. So this activity starts with what do you remember, but then goes to a collaborative group of, hey, now I get to go look at the other people in my group, or if you were using this with your students to see what other people stood out to them and what they remembered about the information. Okay, so we're going to go look at our other slides that people have added to and then add to the third column. We'll have 2 minutes to do that. All right, and you can start. Okay, so that was our 2 minutes. And I think Ashley is going to pull up the slide deck on the screen for us. And so let's just have a conversation about what are some of the things from that third chapter that either stood out to you or that maybe you didn't remember to add to your brain dump, but when you went and looked at someone else's slide that you were like, oh yeah, that I do remember that, or that spoke to me as well. So if anyone has something that they'd like to share, you can just unmute and share with us.
It definitely helped me remember some of the methods that they recommended use, like showing the Frankenstein thing, where like having them create examples and then putting them together. And I also really liked that someone had written brain, the brain is also a supercomputer. And so, teaching the kids that also you can rely on your brain. I think that was good.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the part that we do need to remember is that AI is great, has lots of benefits and can help us, but we all always will have our brain. You're right, Maria. AI is not going away, so let's use it to help us. Absolutely. Anyone else have something? I saw some things on collaboration and that pencil and paper isn't always the answer. Don't try to avoid different resources that students can use. They can assist you in being more creative. Anyone have something specific that kind of stuck out to them that they'd like to share?
I don't know if this is specific or not, but I think for me, the biggest thing from that chapter was when it started off going, well, let's just go back to paper and pencil. That's something I know we've talked a lot about in our building, and we kind of almost want to and think of that as a solution. But the truth is that's not what the kids need, and it won't help them going forward. And so that was a big mind shift, like change, just kind of accepting like this is our reality. And that's kind of a hard thing to swallow.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it is a big shift and a change, and we do have to think through it and embrace it and figure out how to use it. There is always, and you hear that from the technology department, there is always a time for pencil and paper, but we also know that technology and AI is moving forward. So how do we use that for the good? So absolutely. Linda?
Paper and pencil is not usually a good option for my students. So with the severe special needs that they have. And a lot of times I'll have them do an oral or verbal response, and I'll scribe whatever they have to say, or I'll do, have them do some sort of hands-on activity. But I also really like to use technology. And this year I had some kids who had a lot of issue, or this past year, a lot of speech issues. So I actually used that to my advantage and had them do some flips and in responses to some writing prompts. And they verbally responded with their flips, and they got to get super creative with the green screen and all that kind of stuff. And I had the speech therapist help me, in translating what they were saying and everything. And it was so cool. And anyway, that really stuck out when I said, when I read the part about recording it in a video. I do that with my students that can communicate much more clearer. But this past year I tried it, with the ones that I couldn't usually understand as well. And it actually really worked out well. And when I sent each one to the parents, they were just so excited and happy about it. But and that's something that, you know, they'll have forever, and I could just go on. But anyway, sorry I couldn't type it in. I don't know what's up with my phone, but my screen kept going black. So
Well, that's all right. We're glad that you unmuted and shared. And you're right. That's a perfect example of of a way to move past the pencil and paper and allow them that choice and the voice, and to do something verbally and in video wise. So thank you for sharing that. Maria?
One thing that I looked back and saw was like discussions and what was it now? Conversations. Because I have seen that conversation skills are something that students need to practice and need more help with. So I think using AI to boost just the conversation would help them in their conversation skills too, and just like communicating with each other verbally instead of, you know, just either having to write or type everything out.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point to make. Chandler?
Yeah, I really liked how in the third and fourth chapters, you know, we talked last week about, you know, how AI would help with SPED students and ESL students, and almost immediately in chapter 3 it goes into how using AI will help SPED students. And I thought, what a nice callback to last week.
Absolutely.
And then
Help all of our students.
Yeah. And then like in chapter 4, about when it talks about the 30 uses for that we can use for AI, it talks about IEP, like using AI to help writing IEPs and all that. And I'm thinking, okay, I need to be, as soon as we start going back to school, I need to share this with my lead teacher and be like, hey, I took this awesome course over the summer about AI for educators, and it had ways it could help us out in our classroom. So, I mean, let's give some of these things a try.
Absolutely. It's a great starting point for IEPs. You know, you'd have to go in and personalize it and put in what is specific to the students, but at least a good way to get started with one. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing those. Well, we just wanted you to experience a brain dump about the information that was shared in that chapter, but also to kind of have you walk through it as a student so that you can potentially use it in your classroom this next year. So I'm going to swap places with Matt, and Matt, we're going to head into the next portion of our time together.
All righty. So as we were thinking back to last week and how the breakout rooms went and the conversations that took place within them, we found them really beneficial. I think it's while it's great to have a large group of people and having conversations within a large group setting is great. A lot of times we can get deeper and dig in a little bit more in a smaller group setting. So we're going to switch back into the breakouts just as we did in our last session. And similarly to that, we have 5 different topics that we are going to speak to. And they're kind of centered around 5 of the headers that are listed throughout chapter 3. Okay. And really chapter 3 kind of bases itself off of this quote, which comes from page 7. If AI is going to change the world in the near future, we need to prepare students for that world. And that means we'll need to change too. I feel as though thinking back to chapter 2, where Matt Miller speaks about the Gartner hype cycle, we are still very, very early on in that upward curve, in that upward incline. We're probably, as a whole, in the entire world as a whole is still in that conflict and panic stage of the hype cycle. And so I like the way that Matt puts it on page 33 in thinking about some of these topics. It's the break glass in case of emergency section. What are things that we can do immediately that can impact our classroom for the better while still making use of AI in appropriate ways? So we have picked out 5 of the different topics, 5 of the different headers that are listed out throughout chapter 3. So the first is pencil and paper as a stopgap. Make use of classroom discussions, embracing collaborative learning, having students make creative demonstrations of learning, and using retrieval practice, brain dumps, and other memory strategies. And so some of you have shared kind of things that stuck out to you in the brain dump that kind of fits underneath each of these. But we want to expand upon that. We want to share our thoughts and the things that stuck out to us, the things that were really impactful and meaningful to us as we read through those sections of the book. So we're going to do 2 rounds of breakouts today, and we're going to spend about 10 minutes in each. So the way this will work, we'll send you to your breakout room in just a second. Once that 10 minutes is up, we will come back into the main room, get you sorted out into the next breakout room, and then send you on your way again. So we'll have opportunities to discuss 2 of the different topics here. And we have named, just like we did last week, we have named the breakout rooms in those white words that are on the page. Okay. So just as a reminder, you'll be able to find these in the black headers or subheaders throughout chapter 3. If you need, the expanded version of that. So we will go ahead and break out. Let me get that pulled up real quick. There we go. Go ahead and join your room, and we'll be back in 10 minutes. All right, give it a second or 2 more for everybody else to get back in here. I hope you had wonderful conversations with the folks in your breakout rooms for each of the topics that you shared about. So just real quick, we're gonna spend a little bit of time discussing each of those 5 things. So we'll have 2 people per topic, 1 from each round of the breakouts, if that makes sense. So let's talk about the pencil and paper is a stopgap with lots of concerns. What were some things? 2 people share things that were discussed in the breakout rooms there, 1 from each of the 2 breakout rooms.
So my question with that, because I'm all about balance, but where he talks about paper and pencil causing equity issues, we also are going to need to look at our use of AI and equity issues. If you have a class of 7th graders and some are 12 and some are 13, or even in high school, if we're not using our school email addresses, and this is not an app that they can get to on the school Chromebooks, that's going to be up to the parents, right, to decide if they can participate in assignments that use ChatGPT. So I think it'd be a good conversation to have before we get into this, just to make sure we know how to address it and how to make the use of AI and pencil and paper, how to use it in a balance that's equitable for all of our students.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. Thinking about the flip side to that, while there are equity issues, with accessibility and barriers that are evident there using paper and pencil, same is true for using AI. And I think as time goes on, more and more resources will become available that will kind of even out the equity there. There will always be inequities, always. But as we get more advanced and comfortable with using AI and more resources are out there, hopefully that will even itself out some. Excellent point. Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing that. One other person. Paper and pencil is a stopgap. Anybody? All right, well, let's move on down, trying to be mindful of our time together. What about making use of classroom discussions? Two folks share out about that.
One person in our group mentioned using AI for Socratic circles and coming up with like questions, like using AI to come up with questions for like circles, and that was a relief on her as far as prepping goes. And then we just talked a little bit about grading, like how do you grade discussions, and there was some people shared some different resources, but basically the use of the level of engagement of the students and having students type out some questions and type responses to other students, as well as the verbal discussion that happens in the class.
Yes, definitely.
I think that having the classroom discussions can take the learning deeper, because they can reflect on like their learning process, and then apply it to other things. So it's not just being able to repeat what we did or repeat a fact from a book. They're having to take it and apply it to other things, which is more, it's a higher level of thinking.
Definitely. Piggybacking off of both of y'all, classroom discussions. He speaks to how it's so important to have those skills, not only for communicating with each other and building those social skills, but applying them later on down the road too in their future. And we kind of had a discussion in, I was in one of these groups, and we had a discussion about how we can take and apply conversational skills in video recordings too, and using the video recordings or just conversational skills in general for formative feedback, formative assessing, so the teacher can gauge where the learning is for each individual student. One of the folks in our breakout was sharing how she uses Flipgrid with her students and taking their responses, watching them very quickly on her phone in the afternoon, and making quick notes about who she needs to speak to and pull the next day in class. So definitely great for student reflection and application, but also great for teacher formative feedback too. Okay, let's go to the third one, embracing collaborative learning. What was shared in those breakout rooms?
One thing that was mentioned was the importance of student collaboration, but also teacher collaboration.
Uh-huh.
And also that, the more teacher collaboration that goes on, the more, well, not, these terms weren't exactly used, but the more streamlined planning can take place. But I did have a question, and then if I could ask that real quick about
Sure.
this, how would we use AI for collaborative learning as a facilitator, or is that something that we could do?
Yeah. Anyone have any thoughts?
I mean, using it to ask questions, or like, what's a good follow-up question for this point? Or do you agree? Why and why not? And then,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, that's off the top of my head.
I'm going to share what I shared in our breakout session real quick. So one of the other instructional coaches, Melinda, and I have been working this week on a bunch of different PDs, but we've had ChatGPT up on our computers the whole week. It's been like the third member of our PLC. So it would be a member of their collaborative group. And it's no different than using a sentence starter list of giving them places to like springboard their thinking from. Put it in the AI generator and then let them say, I mean, yeah, but, and refine the thoughts of the computer. So I think that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you say that, Kylie. Over in one of the conferences we attended over the summer, they shared with us the future. In the future, collaborative groups are going to have an artificial intelligence member. One of the employees, a part of a group of team, like a team, is going to be an AI. And so I mean that speaks perfectly to what you were just saying. Having that as a third member of your PLC to help generate ideas and kind of elevate what you've already got, expand upon it. Yeah. Excellent. All right, let's move to the fourth one. Have students make creative demonstrations of learning. Let's hear about that.
I know one of the things that we talked about in our book was, or in our group, we talked about we've used things like podcasts before, which is a really great way to get the kids way more engaged than they normally are with just writing. So yeah, again, using more like speaking and listening skills in any type of assignment. That way it's much more relying on their brains.
Definitely. Thumbs up to that, Jason.
I love that it's building their other skill sets, because now they're taking their content knowledge and they're learning a different skill in whatever they're making, the podcast, the billboard, the video, comic strips, whatever it is, they're building skill sets in those areas.
100%. 100%. Anything else there?
I mean, in mine, another person and I talked about, how we kind of known about, or like we've been doing collaborative or creative demonstrations since we were in school. And she mentioned with going to Shelby County schools, like in elementary school, you had like the Young Writers or the Young Authors program, which is something I remember as well. And then making like just different projects where it wasn't just a pencil and paper sort of thing. You had to do something creatively. So how much more now that AI is a thing, is it going to be advanced? Like, how much more advanced is it going to be now that we have things like Chat GPT or like Kahoot or things like that?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
If I could jump in real quick, one of the books I read this summer is called Smart Brevity, and the whole book was about, it was a business book, like your job is to attract eyeballs and get attention for your company. And so you can't do traditional communication really anymore, and you can't send these long emails and have these long PowerPoint slides because people aren't going to pay attention. And I think part of like the natural teacher response is to be like horrified that, you're not going to have a 5-paragraph essay, but like we are really preparing kids for a workforce where it really is capturing eyeballs and attention. And so the creative demonstration, I think, really fits there. Like they've got to learn to grab attention, and it's not going to come from writing an essay.
Yeah. And that's a hard shift to make. Yeah, I agree. Okay. It is 10:58. I'm looking at the clock right now. We are going to discuss this last prompt, but I'm going to go ahead and say this right now. This was scheduled from 10 to 11. So if you have other things planned that you need to step away, totally understand that. But we are going to continue the conversation. We have a couple of other things planned as well to get into this, and Ashley's given me the no-go on those. So yeah, we're going to finish up our conversation here, and then we will we'll add some things into the resource slide that we'll send out tomorrow that has this recording in there too. So let's talk now about the last point there, using retrieval practice, brain dumps, and other memory strategies there. What were things that were discussed in that breakout room?
We mentioned that this wasn't like earth-shattering new information as far as memory strategies go, but the brain dumps really were kind of reaffirming because they reminded us of what we already actually do, like a KWL chart or something, but that those are important strategies that we need to keep doing. And also, that they are useful. So we're not just doing something because we've always done it, but it's, if we call it KWL or brain dump or however we want to phrase it, we need to keep on with it. And that was good and reaffirming for this morning.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. What else? Jason's getting a lot of attention about the book that he shared. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for participating in the breakouts and and hopefully that has generated some ideas and some good, thoughtful conversations there in those. So we are going to open up the Q&A portion here. So as we move into the next bit of this book, I'm going to turn on Q&A. We want to kind of wrap up the session with this activity here. So if you will, as you prepare to move into the next week, do you have questions that have come up as you have read through these two chapters 3 and 4, about AI, that just burning questions that you have come up with as you have read? If so, ask those here. And we will, as the week goes on, we'll look into those and we will bring them back up in the start of the next session so that we can have discussion with those two. All right. I see Michelle's got a question. Go for it. Or she has.
Hey, Matt. This came up in a few of our breakouts, but one consistent burning question I think some of us have is, we love it, we're in, we want to do it, we're excited, but if our students can't use this with their Shelby Ed accounts and we relying on them to use their Chromebooks for the work that they do, what is the plan for how we'll facilitate that? Do you have any suggestions as we're starting to think about the reality of putting hands and feet to it?
Well, I'll tell you what, let's do this. Take that question and open up, and you should see a notification somewhere on the bottom menu or for the Q&A. If you'll open that up and type it in, as we prepare for next week, we will come up with some resources, but also as you go throughout the week too, start thinking about some resources. See if you can find resources on your own too. And we can come back in and have a discussion. But yes, excellent question, Michelle. Burning question. Chandler, you've got your hand raised as well.
Yeah, it's not so much a question, but a comment. But I've been telling teacher friends and such about this book and this class, and I've gotten one or two people that I know that when we get finished with the study want to read the book. When I get done reading it and doing this course. So, it's pretty cool. And even my mom, who was wanting to take the course, but, or do the book study, but has had so much stuff going on. My mom is Cindy Cox, by the way. But so I've got to forward these discussions to her later
Definitely.
on, but people that I'm talking to about this have really thought, oh, this is cool. I want to read the book when you're done and that kind of thing. So,
Yeah. Definitely generating curiosity for sure. Feel free to share. Absolutely. Share away. Let them borrow your book, share with them the notes and the resources that we have provided, and all of the things that you're learning too. All right. We've got some questions that have been added in. We'll take those and run with those. Thanks, Crystal and Michelle, for adding those in. And I will copy and paste those who have added them in the chat as well. So as we leave, we have one more quote to leave you with, and that is from page 43. One of our greatest strengths as humans is our brains. They'll help us adjust for class tomorrow. They'll help us figure out where all of this is headed. And using all of our teaching and life experience, they'll help us adjust to fit our students' needs. And then one last little bit from that. We're human, and that's good. And that's good. So we'll leave you with that. Ruminate on that as the days go on. Continue adding those questions in the Q&A. We'll stay on for a minute or two more if you have any other questions. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed and took a lot from the conversations that you had in your breakout. We will see you all next week, same time, same place. And we are reading the next two chapters. So thanks so much. We'll see y'all later.